She had the most iconic hairstyle of the 1940s and a face that could stop traffic. But behind that peekaboo wave was a life filled with secrets, scandals, and silent heartbreak. Why did Hollywood turn on Veronica Lake so fast? And how did a screen siren end up with her ashes forgotten in a thrift store? The girl with stardust in her eyes. Veronica Lake didn't start out on a movie set. She started out as Connie, a smart, stubborn kid with a strong will and a restless heart. Born in Brooklyn in 1922, she moved around constantly after her father died in an industrial accident. Her mother remarried, and life became a blur of new schools, new towns, and new rules to follow. But Connie wasn't one to follow quietly. Her mother noticed something early on. Maybe it was the way she held herself or the way she could lock eyes with someone and never blink. Whatever it was, it made people pay attention. So she pushed Connie toward the spotlight, beauty pageants, modeling gigs, anything that could shape her into something polished. Connie didn't exactly resist. She liked the idea of being seen, even if she didn't love the process of becoming camera-ready. By the time she was a teenager, she had moved with her mother to Miami and then to Beverly Hills. That's where Hollywood started creeping into her world, not as a fantasy, but as a possibility. Acting school came next. She enrolled at the Bliss Hayden School of Acting, where she studied alongside other hungry young hopefuls. She didn't have the polish yet, but she had something more important: presence. She could walk into a room and turn it electric without saying a word. She didn't have to try to be noticed. It just happened. Directors and casting agents started picking up on her. At first, it was background roles and extra work. She wasn't handed a leading role with fanfare. She earned her way piece by piece, glance by glance. Her name wasn't even Veronica Lake yet. That came later when a producer suggested she needed something more marketable than Connie Ockelman. Veronica Lake had a mystery to it. It sounded like a screen name, something that belonged in big white lights. She embraced the reinvention. But she didn't change who she was. She still had that sharp tongue, that dry wit, and that quiet edge that could either charm you or slice you in half. She played up the glamour, but there was always something real underneath it, something no studio could fully polish away. That's what made her fascinating to watch. Even before she said a line, you could feel a story flickering behind her eyes. By 1939, she was landing small parts in big movies. One of her earliest was in a film called Sorority House, where she barely had screen time but still left an impression. People began to ask, "Who's that girl?" She didn't even need dialogue. Her face did the work. Her stare had that rare kind of stillness, the kind that makes the audience lean in. You couldn't teach that. You either had it or you didn't. And Veronica had it in spades. She wasn't classically trained like some of the other actresses rising at the time. She didn't come from a long line of performers, but what she did have was an unfiltered presence. You couldn't ignore her, even if she was just standing in the background. Slowly, the roles grew bigger. She started appearing in publicity shots, sitting in the backlots between scenes with that bored but beautiful expression. Even then, she seemed to know what kind of image she was building, something both modern and untouchable. Behind the camera, she could be tough to work with. Not because she was a diva, but because she didn't like being told what to do by people she didn't respect. She knew the business was full of men who saw her as a product, not a person, and she pushed back, sometimes subtly, sometimes not, but always with that same quiet defiance that had followed her from childhood. She didn't need to yell to make a point. All she had to do was look at you. That was enough to make producers rethink their tone, co-stars watch their backs, and directors wonder if they were in control of their own sets. Veronica wasn't the kind of girl who sat quietly and smiled through nonsense. And in an era when actresses were expected to be grateful, sweet, and obedient, she was none of those things. She was dangerous in the best possible way. The Hollywood machine didn't quite know what to do with her at first. She wasn't the bubbly type like Judy Garland. She wasn't the elegant dame like Katharine Hepburn. She was her own thing, cool, confident, and slightly unpredictable. And that unpredictability made people curious. It made casting directors wonder if she could carry a film on her own. It made studio heads start drawing up bigger plans. She was still figuring herself out, still learning what kind of roles fit her best. But she already had the look, the attitude, and the spark. And in a business built on image, sometimes that's all you need to catch fire. But sparks in the right place can start wildfires. And in Veronica's case, the blaze began fast. The peekaboo that launched 1,000 fantasies. It started with a simple wave of hair falling across one eye. Veronica Lake didn't invent it. Legend says it happened by accident on set, but it lit a spark that turned into an American obsession. That soft, mysterious curtain of golden hair gave her a look nobody had ever seen before. It made her stand out in a sea of actresses, and Paramount knew they'd struck gold. She became the girl with the peekaboo. That's how they sold her to the world. The name Veronica Lake became shorthand for mystery and allure. She was young, blonde, and looked like a dream frozen in soft lighting. Her photos flooded magazines. She wasn't just popular, she was a full-blown sensation. Men were fascinated by her. Women took photos of her to their hairdressers, asking for the Lake look. That peekaboo wave made her unforgettable before she even opened her mouth. But that hairstyle didn't just bring fame. It turned her into a brand. Everything she did was filtered through that one iconic image. In film after film, she played the sultry, unreadable woman, the femme fatale who always knew more than she let on. Her performances in movies like This Gun for Hire, The Glass Key, and I Married a Witch all leaned on that same look. She became known for her cool, calm delivery. Some thought it was style. Others whispered it was because she couldn't act. But it didn't matter. She had something audiences wanted to see. The studio knew what sold and kept her in a tight box. She wasn't just acting anymore. She was living inside a role 24/7. Publicity photos, interviews, red carpet events, all had to match the brand. The real Veronica started slipping further into the background. She played characters who were cold, aloof, and untouchable, and the public started believing that's who she really was. They didn't want to see the girl who joked around on set or had opinions on her scripts. They just wanted the fantasy. That pressure got heavier with each new role. Veronica tried changing things up, like when she took a part in So Proudly We Hail, a war film where she played a military nurse and had to chop off her famous hair for the role. The cut caused a stir. Newspapers wrote about it. Some fans were outraged. There were even claims that women working in factories during the war were copying her peekaboo style, and it was getting caught in machinery. Veronica said later that officials asked her to change her hair for safety reasons. Whether that's true or just PR spin, the message was clear. The look mattered more than the person. Her short haircut didn't ruin her career, but it did shake her image. Suddenly, she didn't look like Veronica Lake anymore. The magic started to fade, or at least that's how Hollywood saw it. She tried to keep her spot, but something had shifted. The moment you stop matching the fantasy, Hollywood starts to look away. Even though her beauty was praised endlessly, some started to criticize her acting. The way she moved, the way she spoke, it was too calm, too flat, too quiet. But those were the same things people once called cool or magnetic. That's how fast opinions turn in showbiz. You give them something new, they love you for it. Then they get bored and start picking it apart. Still, for a few golden years, Veronica Lake was a symbol of what Hollywood could do. With the right lighting, the right angles, and the right marketing, you could take someone from acting classes to legend. Her peekaboo hairstyle helped win her that legendary status. It gave her fame faster than talent ever could. But it also trapped her inside a character she never really chose. As she walked studio lots or went out in public, people expected her to move and talk like her characters. There was no room to be off script. Strangers came up to her not to meet her, but to meet the idea of her. Even her co-stars didn't always know what to make of her. Some thought she was distant or cold, but maybe she was just tired of pretending all the time. The thing was, the real Veronica was slipping behind the mask, and she felt it. Glamour pays, but it doesn't listen. On camera, she looked like she was born for the silver screen, mysterious, sensual, and cool as ice. But the moment the cameras stopped rolling, Hollywood's love for her started to crack. Behind the scenes, whispers followed her everywhere. People called her difficult. Not because she threw tantrums or missed her lines, but because she didn't bend to the unwritten rules of studio politics. She was blunt. She said what she thought. She didn't fake charm to keep people comfortable. In an industry built on illusions, that kind of honesty scared people. She wasn't one to suck up to producers or sweet-talk her way through interviews. And in the studio system of the 1940s, where actors were expected to act the part both on and off screen, that attitude caused friction. Executives expected their stars to be polished dolls, beautiful, agreeable, and predictable. Veronica didn't fit that mold. She often clashed with her leading men. Some said she was cold. Others called her unprofessional. Word got around that she wasn't easy to work with, and in Hollywood, that phrase was a kiss of death. Once a few directors started using it, others followed. It didn't matter whether the stories were true or exaggerated. The label stuck. Even when she delivered stellar performances and drew audiences to theaters, the negative buzz started to overshadow her talent. Studio heads began to second-guess casting her. They weighed her beauty against her reputation and started seeing her as a risk. And in a business built on control and image, no one liked a wild card. The frustrating part? Veronica wasn't misbehaving. She was just being herself. She didn't want to play Hollywood's game of fake smiles and flattery. She didn't throw on a fake personality to win approval. But in a world where image was everything, that kind of honesty didn't earn you points. It cost you roles. She kept working, but the glow around her name started to dim. She noticed how fewer scripts came her way. Fewer directors fought to cast her. The conversations behind closed doors had changed. People who once called her a rising star now called her a problem. And once Hollywood turns on you, the spiral is fast. There were also tensions between her and the studio itself. Paramount had built her image from the ground up. They'd given her the peekaboo hair, the femme fatale roles, the magazine covers. But now, they wanted control over how she acted off camera too. They expected her to play the perfect star 24/7. And when she didn't, they treated it like betrayal. Her fame hadn't faded completely. People still loved her on screen. Magazines still printed her photos. But those cracks were there. Even in her prime, the studio system had started pulling back its support. And in that era, once the machine stopped backing you, you were already halfway to forgotten. Some directors still admired her skill. She had a way of commanding attention without overacting. Her quiet strength, her stillness, that was rare. But it didn't matter anymore. Hollywood didn't reward mystery if it came with resistance. It rewarded obedience. And Veronica, no matter how bankable she was, wasn't the kind of star you could mold. She didn't beg for roles, she didn't chase headlines, and that only made things worse. To the press, she seemed distant. To producers, she seemed ungrateful. To her co-stars, she seemed cold. Everyone had an opinion, and few of them were kind. Even gossip columns, which once adored her, turned their tone. They started writing less about her beauty and more about her attitude. They painted her as moody and ungrateful. And once that narrative took over, it became hard to reverse. She still had fans, the audience still showed up, but the cracks kept growing. Each new project felt like a test. Would this one win the studio back? Would this one silence the rumors? The pressure never let up, and slowly the foundation of her career, the one built on a single iconic look, started to feel shaky. But even when her career shook, her image still sold, and that image soon became part of something bigger than Hollywood. A pinup with a patriotic price tag. Veronica Lake didn't ask to be a national icon, but during World War II, that's exactly what she became. Her face was everywhere, on bomber planes, in soldiers' lockers, on morale posters in barracks. GIs pinned her image next to their hearts, calling her the dream girl they were fighting to come home to. Her soft voice, her sultry stare, and that hypnotic peekaboo hair gave her this larger-than-life glow. She looked like she had stepped out of a dream and onto the silver screen. But that dream came with a price. The U.S. government started noticing a strange problem. Women working in wartime factories, welding, riveting, using industrial machines, were getting hurt. Their hair was getting caught in equipment, and when officials looked into why, they found the source: Veronica Lake, or more specifically her signature hairstyle. The famous peekaboo wave that hung over one eye looked glamorous on screen but was proving dangerous in real life. Women across the country were copying it, unaware of the risks. Safety campaigns didn't work. They needed the source to speak up. So they went to her. Veronica didn't argue. She understood what was being asked. At the peak of her popularity, she stepped in front of the cameras and cut her hair. Not because she wanted to, but because she felt it was her duty. The peekaboo look was gone, replaced by a more practical, factory-safe style. It was a patriotic move. It was also a gamble. People noticed the change, and not all of them were kind. Some fans were confused, others were disappointed. A few critics even accused her of sabotaging her own appeal. The glamour that made her stand out was now gone, and suddenly she looked like every other Hollywood blonde. Her screen presence dimmed a little, not because she lost her talent, but because her edge had been dulled. She had obeyed the call of duty, and in return, her image lost its mystique. Studios began to fidget. Veronica's marketability was built on that look. With it gone, the execs at the top weren't sure what to do with her. Her screen roles didn't stop immediately, but they lost some of their spark. Directors began casting her in safer, less iconic parts. She was still beautiful, still talented, but something was off. She didn't shine quite the same. Veronica kept doing her part. She toured military hospitals, visited wounded soldiers, and spoke at war bond rallies. She didn't complain. She put in the work, smiled through the exhaustion, and shook hands with hundreds of troops. In those moments, she wasn't a movie star. She was someone's daughter, sister, or sweetheart, giving soldiers a piece of home. But while she was lifting spirits overseas, things were shifting back in Hollywood. New actresses were rising fast. Their look was fresh, their style untouched by wartime politics. Veronica, once at the top of the billing, was now being discussed in the past tense. Studio executives started to focus on what was next, not who had come before. And though she still had fans, the public's attention drifted. That's how Hollywood works. One day you're the nation's dream girl, and the next, you're just another star fading behind the curtain. Her patriotism had made her a hero, but it had also changed her trajectory. When she returned to film work, some critics noted that the magic had cooled. Her hairstyle wasn't the only thing that changed. Her roles were different too. Lighter, less daring, more confined. It was as if the industry didn't know how to use her anymore. And in that confusion, her momentum began to slow. Some people blamed her directly. They said she had lost her charm, lost her edge. But they never looked at the bigger picture. Veronica had sacrificed part of her identity to help a country at war. She gave up her most famous asset because it was the right thing to do. In the process, she disrupted the very image that made her a star. Years later, she spoke about how quickly public opinion could change. One minute she was being applauded for her service, and the next, her loyalty was being questioned. It was a tough thing to process, being celebrated one day and quietly sidelined the next. She didn't regret cutting her hair, but she definitely noticed how it shifted the way people treated her. And while her look changed, the world moved on, and Veronica found herself chasing the spotlight she once owned. A star falls faster than she rose. After the war ended, her glamorous run began to stall, fast. The same studios that once plastered her face on every billboard now acted like they didn't even know her name. It wasn't about her talent, it was about image. And Veronica's image, according to studio executives, didn't sell anymore. Paramount, the very studio that made her a household name, dropped her. They didn't bother with subtlety. There was no drawn-out negotiation or farewell tour. Just a quiet goodbye. She was released from her contract, and just like that, the studio machine that once protected and promoted her was gone. That security, that power, that fame, it vanished almost overnight. Her name, once lit up in marquees, became easier to miss. She tried to stay in the game. She still had talent, and she knew how the business worked. But the industry had moved on. New actresses took over the roles she used to be offered. The glamour she once radiated now felt like something from a black and white memory reel. The directors didn't call. Agents didn't pitch her name like they used to. She went from top billed to barely mentioned. Her public image suffered too. The media that once adored her now picked apart every move. Rumors swirled about her being difficult or unreliable. And once that kind of label sticks in Hollywood, it spreads like wildfire. There were whispers that she was drinking too much, that she didn't take direction well, that she had burned too many bridges. Whether those things were fair or not didn't matter. In that town, perception was reality. The real blow wasn't just losing roles, it was losing momentum. Once it's gone in Hollywood, clawing your way back becomes almost impossible. Veronica tried smaller films, she did stage work, she even dipped into television. But the offers were limited and the spotlight dimmer each time. What used to feel like a climb now felt like a slow slide, and she couldn't find the brakes to stop it. And she felt it deeply. You could see it in her interviews from the time, shorter answers, less sparkle in her voice. It wasn't just a professional loss, it was personal. Veronica had built her identity around this career. When it began to unravel, so did her sense of place. She had become a brand before branding was even a thing. And when that brand faded, she was left asking who she was without it. The money problems followed soon after. Without major roles, her income shrank. The lifestyle that came with stardom, fancy homes, designer clothes, luxurious travel, no longer matched her reality. She sold off valuables. She downsized. There were no endorsement deals waiting for her. The industry didn't support its fallen stars the way it pretended to in the magazines. Veronica found herself doing what many washed-up actors have done, trying to keep it all together in a world that only wants you when you're winning. She wasn't even 35, but Hollywood had already labeled her as done. And in those years, that label was deadly to a career. There were no redemption arcs for women in the spotlight back then. If you didn't reinvent fast enough, they replaced you, simple as that. And when the scripts stopped coming, so did the safety net, especially in her personal life. Love, marriage, and a trail of broken pieces. Veronica Lake's love life felt like one of those Hollywood stories where the drama behind the scenes could have filled its own movie script. She got married young. Too young, some would say. Her first marriage to art director John Detley came when she was still finding her place in the world. It seemed like a safe move, maybe even a stable one. But things quickly turned sour, and the cracks began showing even before her Hollywood stardom had fully bloomed. By the time their daughter was born, the marriage was already struggling. The pressure of fame and motherhood didn't mix well, and it eventually collapsed. Then came Andre de Toth, the tough, ambitious director who matched Veronica's energy and drive. At first, it looked like a power couple setup. He understood showbiz, and she had the star power. They had children together and shared a glamorous lifestyle. But that picture-perfect setup didn't last long either. Behind the scenes, their marriage became another emotional battlefield. Fights, arguments, and resentment crept into the relationship. The passion that brought them together turned into something much colder. Her career was slowing down, and his work often pulled him in different directions. They clashed more than they connected. Parenthood didn't soften things, it added stress. Veronica found herself juggling roles on screen with real-life roles as a mom in a crumbling marriage. The custody battles that followed were messy and painful. She loved her children deeply, but the courts didn't always side with her. Legal issues mounted. De Toth wasn't shy about pointing fingers, and Veronica found herself painted in a negative light during the fights. She once said she hated publicity, but during those court appearances she couldn't escape it. Divorce didn't bring relief. It brought more headlines, more pressure, and more heartache. Every breakup she had seemed to get more public and more painful. Friends noticed she was changing. She wasn't the same bold, quick-witted woman she used to be. The sparkle in her eye started to dim. She went from red carpet premieres to lawyers' offices, and the emotional toll kept piling on. Even when the cameras weren't around, she couldn't find peace. She tried to move on, even had more relationships, but the pattern never broke. They all seemed to follow the same path: fast beginnings, emotional highs, and then everything crashing down. Veronica wasn't just dealing with heartbreak, she was dealing with the public watching her every move. Every failed relationship became another punchline in the tabloids. People stopped seeing her as a glamorous actress and started viewing her as a headline generator. She once admitted she wasn't easy to live with. That honesty said a lot. Fame had magnified everything: her temper, her insecurities, and her fear of abandonment. She didn't always choose partners who supported her mental health, and they didn't always handle her complexity with grace. The result? Years of emotional damage and personal instability that went deeper than gossip magazines ever showed. During all this, Veronica tried to keep working. She took on roles she didn't love just to stay visible. She made public appearances that felt forced. And through it all, she was trying to raise kids, heal from past wounds, and hold on to what was left of her identity. She was famous, yes, but she was also someone trying to survive a personal storm with barely any shelter. There were nights when she would drink too much, and mornings when she'd wake up regretting the things she said. The emotional wear and tear showed in her eyes and her voice. People in the industry started distancing themselves, but her children saw different sides of her, sometimes loving and soft, other times overwhelmed and distracted. Veronica wasn't heartless. She wanted to be better, but the industry that had once worshipped her didn't give her many chances for a fresh start. And every time a new relationship failed, she was left wondering if the problem was her or the people she let into her life. With her career fading and love failing, she began slipping into places no spotlight could reach. Rock bottom in the rearview mirror. By the time the 1950s rolled around, Veronica Lake had completely vanished from Hollywood's radar. No interviews, no red carpets, no new movie posters with her name on them, just silence. The girl with the peekaboo hair, who once lit up screens and left producers scrambling to work with her, had become a ghost in her own industry. Her fame had burned so bright and so fast that its sudden absence felt like a blackout. She moved to New York City, away from the limelight and far from the people who once called her a star. Life there wasn't glamorous. It was about survival. She picked up work wherever she could. One of the most talked about roles she ever took during this time didn't involve cameras or scripts. It was behind a bar. Veronica Lake, once one of Hollywood's highest paid actresses, was now pouring drinks in a small Manhattan hotel lounge. The regulars had no idea. To them, she was just the quiet, blonde bartender with a sharp wit and an air of mystery. Maybe some noticed her eyes seemed familiar. Maybe someone mentioned she looked a bit like that movie star from the 40s. But the name Veronica Lake didn't ring any bells anymore. And she didn't correct anyone. There was no reason to explain who she used to be. Those days were gone, and trying to relive them only made the present harder to bear. What really hurt wasn't the job itself. It was the way people had forgotten. The same industry that once crowned her now refused to even acknowledge her. Producers didn't call. Directors didn't send scripts. Reporters had stopped writing her name altogether. Her fall from grace wasn't just about losing fame, it was about being erased from the story altogether. Her physical health was another battle. She had already faced a series of illnesses in the past, including complications from alcohol use, but during this time, those issues worsened. She struggled with chronic pain, and with no stable source of income or health support, her conditions went largely untreated. Pain became a regular part of her daily routine, and it pushed her further into isolation. The emotional toll was no easier. Living in a small apartment, surrounded by strangers who didn't recognize her, Veronica was stuck somewhere between her past and her reality. There were no premieres to prepare for, no co-stars to gossip with, no makeup chair laughter echoing between takes. She had gone from movie sets and limos to small shifts and subway rides. The loneliness crept in, and with every passing year, it grew heavier. She didn't complain much, though. Those who met her during this time say she was sharp, sometimes funny, and oddly proud of how she was surviving. Even if her surroundings weren't what she had dreamed of, she still showed up. She worked, she lived quietly, and she didn't beg the world to remember her. She simply kept going. There's something both heartbreaking and impressive about that. She didn't have a team of handlers or a comeback plan. She just kept showing up to bartend night after night. There was no big Hollywood moment of redemption, no surprise role that brought her back, no variety headline announcing her return. For a long time, no one even knew where she was. Her name occasionally popped up in quiet rumors or nostalgic "where are they now" conversations. But for the most part, it was radio silence. Her fame had been swallowed whole by time, and the world didn't seem interested in looking for her. But as the world forgot her, a strange kind of curiosity started building back up. A ghost in the spotlight's glow. When newspapers first published the story, people couldn't believe it. Veronica Lake, Yes, that Veronica Lake was spotted bartending in a dingy hotel bar in Manhattan. For anyone who remembered her as the platinum-haired goddess of the silver screen, it was like seeing royalty wiping tables. The setting was surreal. Guests sipped cheap cocktails under fluorescent lights, while a former Hollywood icon poured drinks just feet away. Many didn't recognize her. Time had blurred the sharp lines of her famous peekaboo hairstyle, and her once glamorous figure had thinned from illness and hard living. But word spread fast, especially among nostalgic film fans and industry folks. Suddenly, small papers started picking up her story. Starlet turned bartender became a headline that bounced through newsstands coast to coast. People were shocked, confused, even angry. How could someone so famous disappear into this kind of life? Letters poured in. Some came from old fans, others came from people who simply felt bad. They offered jobs, housing, even money. Some asked if she needed help. A few just wanted to say they still remembered her, even if the world didn't. The attention was strange. After years of being invisible, she was back in the headlines, but not because of a movie role or glamorous photo shoot. She was being seen for her struggle. In the middle of this renewed curiosity, Veronica made a bold move. She decided to tell her side of the story. She wrote a memoir called Veronica, the autobiography of Veronica Lake. It wasn't ghost-written fluff or sugar-coated nostalgia. It was raw. She talked about the pressures of fame, her battles with mental health, the broken marriages, the drinking, the disillusionment. She also poked fun at herself. There was sarcasm, wit, moments of brutal honesty. It was a strange read, one part confession, one part roast, one part farewell. The book caught some attention, especially among people who had grown up watching her films. Fans and critics alike praised her honesty, even if the storytelling was messy. She wasn't trying to paint herself as a victim. She wasn't asking for a comeback either. She just wanted the truth out there, her truth. For a brief moment, it worked. She did some interviews. A few journalists wrote long-form pieces about her life. There were even whispers about possible television appearances, but it didn't stick. Hollywood didn't come calling. Studios weren't interested in giving her a second chance. The industry had moved on to new faces and younger stars. The glamour that had once defined her was now part of a bygone era. A few die-hard fans still mailed her letters, and now and then a journalist would check in to see where she'd landed. But the excitement faded just as quickly as it had arrived. She returned to her quiet life, still moving from place to place, still trying to make ends meet. Her name floated in and out of the public eye, usually through trivia or fan magazines. She'd become one of those whatever happened to stories. Her image, once used to sell millions of war bonds, was now something you saw in old movie posters or black and white reruns late at night. People recognized the face, but not the woman behind it. Yet even in her final years, she never stopped trying to find her own version of peace. Quiet end to a noisy life. Veronica Lake's final years didn't look like the life people imagined for a former Hollywood star. There was no mansion in the hills, no award ceremonies, no glamorous comebacks. She moved from place to place, staying with friends and working small jobs when she could. Her fame had burned so brightly in the 1940s, but by the 1960s, it was a distant flicker. Most people barely recognized her anymore. She tried to keep going even when the world seemed to have forgotten her. Some people who met her in those later years didn't believe she was the Veronica Lake. They thought she was just a woman with the same name. Her once iconic face had aged. Her famous peekaboo hairstyle was gone, and the soft glow of the studio lights had long faded. She had become a mystery, even to those around her. She lived for a while in New York and later ended up in Vermont. It was quiet there. No screaming fans, no film shoots, no photographers waiting outside her door. She spent her days reading, writing, and trying to make sense of everything she had lived through. She talked sometimes about the old days, about Alan Ladd, about her movies, about how strange it all had been. But mostly, she stayed in the present, keeping her circle small. In 1973, she died at the age of 50. The cause was hepatitis and kidney failure. She passed away in a small hospital in Burlington, Vermont. There was no media frenzy, no special reports, no outpouring from the industry that once chased her down red carpets, just a small note in a local paper. The world didn't seem to notice. Hollywood had long since moved on to newer faces and fresher stories. She had made it clear she wanted her ashes scattered. She had hoped for a quiet return to nature. But that didn't happen. For reasons no one fully explained, her ashes weren't scattered at all. They disappeared. No one knew where they went. It was only decades later that they were found, tucked away in a thrift store in the Pacific Northwest, still sealed in a simple urn. Someone bought it without knowing what was inside. When they found out, the story made headlines for a moment, bringing Veronica's name back into the spotlight one last time. It felt like one more twist in a life that never stopped surprising people. From overnight stardom to total obscurity, from gossip column darling to forgotten bartender, her story moved like a broken reel, fast, jagged, and hard to follow. And even after death, the film kept rolling, off script and out of focus. There are old photographs of her now, grainy black and whites with soft lighting and that dreamy expression she wore so well. She looks frozen in time, like a spirit caught between worlds. Some people still stumble across her movies and stop to watch, drawn in by her face or her voice or something they can't quite explain. They don't always know who she is, but they feel something heavy, something sad, something beautiful. People remember her for different reasons. Some remember her as the original blonde bombshell. Others see her as a cautionary tale about fame, beauty, and the cost of both. A few still argue about whether she was a good actress or just a studio creation. There are critics who think she was underrated, and others who believe her image was bigger than her talent. But the truth doesn't sit neatly on either side. Her life didn't follow a script, and neither did the way people talk about her now. Veronica Lake never got the big ending most stars dream of. No final role that tied everything together, no reunion interviews, no last standing ovation. She just slipped away. But even in that quiet exit, there was something haunting, something that lingers, just like her eyes used to linger on the screen long after the scene had cut. Some legacies are written in awards and statues. Others float in rumors and old headlines. And some, like Veronica's, hide in second-hand stores, in faded film reels, in the corners of memory where old stories still whisper. Her life didn't need a big final act. It ended the way the rest of it had gone, strange, unfinished, and unforgettable. And just like that, she was gone. No lights, no camera, just a final fade to black. And that's the real story of Veronica Lake, how a Hollywood dream turned into a haunting memory. If this left you thinking about the dark side of fame, you're not alone. Let us know in the comments what part of her story hit you the hardest. And if you want more forgotten legends and untold Hollywood truths, you know what to do. Subscribe, hit that bell, and we'll bring you the stories most people have never heard. Thanks for watching.